Council special meeting of March 3rd, 2020. The consent agenda consists of one item, and that is authorization to hold an executive session. I have received no request for removal. Is there a motion from the council?
A motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And the consent agenda passes unanimously. We won't. Councilmember Finn,
I am a yes.
are you a yes to the consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Thank you. Consent agenda passes unanimously, and we will now adjourn to executive session.
was around when they were.
This meeting will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Carlett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Finn.
Actually physically here this time, yes.
Councilmember Patena.
Here.
Councilmember Bensbacher.
Here.
Councilmember Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Hunt. Councilmember Dunn.
Here.
Council Liaison Greathouse.
Here.
And Council Liaison Robindron.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Peoria City Council special meeting of March 3rd, 2020. We have one item on our study session agenda tonight, and it is update on enterprise funds. I'll turn it over to City Manager Jeff Tyne.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for this opportunity. And as part of the fiscal year 2021 budget process, we wanted to discuss our various utilities that we have at the city. So as you recall, the city does administer a number of different utilities like a business. This includes services such as water, wastewater collection and treatment, our sanitation services, and our stormwater. And again, as we mentioned, they are looked at a little differently than some of the general taxpayer functions. So to help us with all of that, navigate, we have a few of our directors here, including our Chief Financial Officer, Sonia Andrews, our Water Services Director, Kate Powers, and Kevin Burke, our Public Works Director. But to go through this, I wanted to pass this over to our Deputy City Manager, Eric Strong.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're excited to be here tonight. As Jeff mentioned, we'd like to take a high-level view and share with you a little bit about our enterprise funds and our public utilities. We're going to focus in on 5 of them this evening: water, wastewater, commercial, residential sanitation. That includes recycling. And we'll also talk about our stormwater fee. And to help with that presentation, as Jeff mentioned, Sonia Andrews is here. She's our CFO, and she's going to kind of walk us through what an enterprise fund actually is and some of the financial measures that we put in place in Peoria to make sure that we continue to maintain those very responsibly and with a lot of foresight. As you know, our enterprise funds, they're variable, and they're subject to a variety of pressures that occur within the industry. They're very focused. Jeff mentioned we do run those like a business, and the most important piece of it is having the conversation with you, sharing with you trends that we're seeing, the pressure points that kind of pinch and kind of nibble at these enterprise funds, but these are items we have to address and we have to plan for. So you're going to hear from Sonia from a financial perspective this evening. She's going to cover the overview. Cape will then jump into it and talk about water and wastewater. He's going to focus a little bit on the operation, but also more importantly, what he sees coming down the road trend-wise. Then we're going to segue to Kevin. He'll talk about commercial and residential sanitation in the stormwater. Sonia will then take it again, and she'll talk about the rates, our current rates, and briefly about the rate study, and we'll wrap it up after that point. I think overall, the biggest point we want to do this afternoon, this evening, is assure you and assure those who may be watching in our community that our enterprise funds are sound and they're very well run, operated, and we meet a very important need for those that avail themselves of these funds from a water standpoint, from a wastewater standpoint, and the other pieces of it. So with that, I'll kind of conclude and turn it over to Sonia, and she'll give you a good overview. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, and good evening, Mayor, good evening, Council. So we often refer to our utilities as enterprise funds. What do we mean by that, and what is an enterprise fund? Well, an enterprise fund is a government operation that's run like a business in the sense that we provide services and goods for a fee. So enterprise funds are self-supporting through fees and charges. They don't rely on taxes or the general fund. That's what an enterprise fund is, and that's what our utility operations are, self-supporting through fees and charges. As Eric mentioned, we actually have 4 enterprise funds. Solid waste is split into, we look at it from residential and commercial, that's why he mentioned 5, but we really truly have 4 enterprise funds. Now, in order to ensure our enterprise funds are well managed and financially sound, you as our council have wisely put in place some key operating financial principles which we abide by. First of all, we ensure that we maintain the true definition of an enterprise fund, and that is that they are self-supporting, as we talked about, cost recoveries through fees and not relying on taxes and the general fund. Another principle is that our enterprise funds do not support or subsidize non-related or other operations, meaning all the fees and charges we collect for each of those utilities are used solely to maintain and operate those specific utilities. They do not go and support police or fire or parks and rec operations. Another principle is maintaining financial stability through investing in our operating and capital needs. Cape and Kevin will go through those operating needs with you. Maintaining adequate reserves, maintaining manageable debt levels. And then finally, one of our principles is also maintaining rate stability and affordability through periodic rate studies and also watching and addressing cost pressures that might impact our rates. Again, Cape and Kevin will address what those are with you as well. So because of these strong financial management principles, we have one of the lowest rates in the valley. And as you can see, this is a chart comparing our average residential customer rates today. These are the rates across the valley today. And as you can see, we are significantly lower than some of our peer cities. This allows us to be competitive from an economic development perspective, for economic development purposes, while we maintain affordability for our residents. We will talk more about our utility rate structures later, but for now, I'm going to hand you over to Cape and Kevin to discuss the utility operations with you.
All right, thank you, Sonia. Good evening, Mayor and Council. What I'd like to do first is quickly remind everyone of the basic size and the components that make up the two enterprise funds that are essentially housed in the Water Services Department. The water and sewer systems are extremely valuable components and assets that touches virtually every citizen in our city every day. The first fund I'd like to touch on is the Water Enterprise Fund. As you can see in the slide, the fund has an operational budget of about $28 million. And the fiscal year 2020 capital improvement budget was about $46 million, not including carryovers. So for fiscal year 2020, the entire budget is about $73.7 million. Council approved a 10-year capital improvement program last year, and it contains approximately $175 million to spend over the 10-year period, with approximately 50% of that related to growth or growth-related projects. So as a result of comprehensive planning and thoughtful policy decisions by Council, we're taking care of today's citizens and residents and also preparing for future residents to arrive. A breakdown of the operational entities is included in the pie chart on the right-hand side. You might note that the largest slice of the pie is water, supply, and resources. So this is the cost required to get water from the Salt River Project, the Central Arizona Project, and to buy water from the Pyramid Peak Water Treatment Plant, which we share with the City of Glendale. Moving on to the Wastewater Enterprise Fund, you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, the 2020 operations budget is just under $12 million. The capital budget is approximately $10.8 million for a total of around $22.6 million. So it's still a considerable amount of money, but quite a bit lower than the Water Enterprise Fund. Again, the pie chart on the right-hand side breaks down the various operational budget components of the fund, and again, does not include capital projects. By far, the single largest expenditure is the Butler Water Reclamation Facility. This is somewhat to be expected. I mean, the Butler facility contains about 60% of the city's capacity to treat wastewater. The rest of the operational dollars are divided up amongst the two water reclamation facilities, Beardsley and Jomax, and our Collections and Environmental Operations Division. I mean, as you can see, the water and sewer enterprise funds are quite large and constitute a good chunk of the total city budget. Are there any questions? All right. Next, I want to give you an idea of the number of accounts we serve and the relative sizes of the systems supported by the two funds. As you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, the water system has just under 51,000 residential water meter services and a little over 3,000 non-residential services, which are a combination of commercial, industrial, and other business types. just under 1,200 miles of water mains are in the system. The diagram shows that the rated capacity of the treatment plants that we use to ensure high quality potable water is available to all of our citizens. You might notice that the Pyramid Peak plant has two numbers listed, 11 million gallons and 24 million gallons. That's because council prudently approved a plan to expand that plant that we share again with Glendale to allow us to use more water from the Central Arizona Project Canal, which is a resource that is renewable, and we can rely on it to get year in, year out, rather than just pumping water out of the ground or some other option. The expansion project is underway and scheduled to be completed in 2021. On the wastewater side, the system has just, go ahead. All right. On the wastewater side, the system has just under 53,000 residential sewer accounts and around 1,400 non-residential accounts. We have approximately 812 sewer mains in the ground to serve the citizens of Peoria. And you can also see in the diagram on the slide the rated capacities of the various plants. Questions?
Yeah, sorry, this one would bug me all night if I don't ask the question. So give me an example where you would have a residential sewer account, but you wouldn't have a residential water meter.
So we have a number of private water systems inside the city. So for instance, we have the Sunrise Water District, or we have, we have EPCOR in there as well. And so we supply those with sewer service, but not water service.
Okay.
So
Okay,
that,
thank you.
yep. Moving on from physical components of the enterprise funds, I'd like to go over the water resources available to serve our citizens. And most of you have likely seen some version of this chart before. I think I showed it last year when I was before you, although it's been updated for 2020 or 2019 usage. This is a listing of the water resources that Peoria has available to serve current and future residents as per the, bear with me, the 2010 Arizona Department of Water Resources designation of assured water supply. There, I got that out. Okay, I'm showing it as a reminder that we continue to have a robust water supply portfolio in the Water Enterprise Fund, but I also want to remind people again that maintenance of this supply does incur a cost. Recall that maintaining access to this water is about 1/3 of our total water enterprise operational budget. Another point, there's a line near the bottom of the slide that reads total available to customers. We had available to our customers approximately 32,000 acre-feet of water in 2019. That's essentially what we serve to our customers and put into the system for various uses, which is about 47% of our total water portfolio. So nearly half. And this amount obviously varies by year, depending on, believe it or not, weather conditions and things like that. Predicting water usage is at times literally predicting the weather to determine how much people use for irrigation. But over time, the amount of usage, this percentage of total usage will go up as we grow into the portfolio, okay? So much of what we hold is literally held for future residents to arrive, okay? You might note that we have groundwater listed as a source of supply in the middle of the numbers here, in the middle of the chart. Although we are allowed to take 3,114 acre-feet of water out of the ground every year, we don't operate in this manner. This can cause a little bit of confusion because it shows up on here every time and I have to put it on here because it's part of the official designation. But the reality is that's not how we operate. You might also wonder about this because we do have 27 wells around the city that we actively pump out. So we'll explain this on the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about those 27 wells and the associated groundwater impacts. As part of the operations of the Water Enterprise Fund, we pump out of the ground with water wells into our potable water supply about 10,600 acre-feet of water a year. We also recharge back into the ground utilizing Central Arizona Project water or reclaimed water from our wastewater treatment plants, about 30,500 acre-feet of water into the ground. So you can see we put about 20,000 acre-feet of water more into the ground than we take out, and that's how we run those wells. Properly managed, this is a sustainable practice that can positively impact the aquifer because we're putting more water in than we take out. This 20,000 acre-feet is also how we accumulate long-term storage credits, which is a critical component of our water supply portfolio. An extremely valuable component of our wastewater enterprise fund is highly treated wastewater or reclaimed water from our wastewater treatment plants. You should note that we currently put to beneficial use the vast majority of this reclaimed water. We get it from the 3 plants, obviously, Joe Max, Beardsley, and Butler, and we primarily use it for irrigation and for recharging into the ground. Volumes used in 2019 are shown in purple on the slide. The purple pipe system was used to deliver over 800 acre-feet of water to irrigate parks, landscaped areas, and a school. And the 10,000 acre-feet you see there was recharged into the ground. The picture you see actually shows a recharge basin in action. This one's pretty low-tech. You literally put water out on the ground in a shallow pool and let it soak in. There are other more sophisticated ways and groundwater wells and things like that, one of which we've just completed. We currently have a significant amount of, go ahead.
Second.
Yeah.
If an HOA, which I think most of them do, flood irrigate their parks, their local parks, do they get the same recharged water, and then are they charged for it? Is that how that works?
We currently only have one HOA that's on our purple pipe system and that uses the water. The rest of them that you're seeing flood irrigation, if they're in the south part of town in your district, are likely using SRP water to do that flood irrigation.
Okay.
Yep.
Then they're charged by SRP.
Correct.
And which would be, excuse me, which would be the most economically feasible for an HOA?
It kind of depends on their situation, how they go about using their water. SRP water can be cheaper, but we try to get people to use reclaimed water to do things like not flood irrigate, to use more sophisticated irrigation systems, to use the water a little wiser, if you will. And I'm not quite exactly sure how that would balance out. It all depends on how much they use.
Do you ever go to the HOAs with a presentation to
We-
show that this is really a better way to do it?
We've done that historically in the past. It's been a number of years. It's one of our plans to sort of revitalize that effort as we have a new sustainability person hired. And we also have a new water resources manager person, and it's somebody who's that's something that's on our radar to look at and see if we can do a better job at it.
Yeah, Mayor and Councilmember Hunt, Kate's alluding to there, and Jeff mentioned too, in the upcoming budget, we'll talk about that a little bit, xeriscape rebates, water conservation, and the use of purple pipe. It's an asset, as Kate mentioned earlier, and we're shifting, and you'll see this, and you'll hear this from us quite often. We're shifting to the use of that and as a commodity, and to accomplish that, you have these reinvestments that occur, you have the education that occurs, and we need to, quite frankly, go out and put some shoe leather on the street. We need to get accounts, and we want to use this in that fashion. There are consequences, good and challenging, and we will talk through those as we get a little closer to it. But to answer your question, yeah, we'd like to use that from our HOAs and distribute that more broadly.
Yeah, we have a modest-sized purple pipe system in the ground at this point in time, but we have a significant amount of investment dollars in the current capital improvement program to ensure that current and future generations extract the highest and best use out of this reclaimed water. And we actually have a reclaimed water study underway. It's just started in the last month or two to help us prepare for this changing, evolving water world, new technology advancements and regulatory changes that are coming our way. So actually, we're doing quite a bit right now in this world.
Sounds like it. Thank you.
Do we have a lot of neighborhoods that are still irrigating with SRP water?
Just Old Town, I think,
Yeah, I don't know.
Just that one area?
and it's very few.
Yeah. I didn't
Yeah,
think a lot
it's
of people
very
do it anymore. It's not very cost effective.
Correct.
Thanks.
Moving on, I want to briefly mention a few of the other activities within the water and wastewater enterprise funds. Because of the close relationship between sustainability and water conservation in our desert environment, Victoria Castor, our new sustainability and water conservation coordinator, I got her permission to use her name in the meeting, is housed within Water Services. She is also responsible for the ongoing water conservation classes we hold as part of Sustainable U. You might know our crews perform tracking and some testing of backflow prevention devices, which is an important part of providing potable water system to our outside, or protecting our potable water system from outside contaminants. We also manage the water and sewer coordination and resource issues for private development. It's very common to have economic development folks call and ask us about a specific site or a specific use to verify that we actually have utilities on site or nearby to service those uses. And although many of these activities just kind of run in the background, a bit hidden from the view of the public at times, especially the lab folks, they're an important part of our mission. And they can be impacted by the things in our industry that affect our costs and our levels of service as well. Speaking of costs, I'd just like to briefly touch on some of the primary variables that can influence costs related to water and wastewater enterprise funds. The type of things that can affect the two funds are pretty similar, so we're just going to kind of group them together, and it saves me a slide, right? For starters, although we enjoy having a robust water portfolio that allows us to grow into the future, as I've mentioned previously, there are holding costs to this water. I think we're all aware that water resource costs have generally been on the rise. And we're enjoying a period of growth that is adding to the number of rate-paying customers for the enterprise funds, but there are operations and maintenance costs and infrastructure improvement costs related to this growth. This is to be expected. This isn't something we didn't see coming. And as customers come, they require more pipes, treatment plant upgrades, and other improvements to maintain the desired level of service. New facilities such as the Westland Reservoir and Pump Station in the Vistancia area require staff to maintain it, power to turn the pumps, things like that. Wastewater treatment plant upgrades to maintain a level of service and prepare for future residents require large sums of capital dollars. Even so, we are operationally constantly looking for ways to operate more efficiently and increase the effectiveness of our staff. And we're always on the lookout for how changing technologies and emerging technologies can help us operate more efficiently and maximize the life cycle costs of our assets. Lastly, federal and state legislation can certainly impact the cost to provide the services that we provide. Adoption of the state and federal drought contingency plan for the Colorado River is perhaps a very well-known example of this. But even things like increasing testing requirements for lead and copper and things like that due to changing federal laws do have an effect on us. That's all I have prepared for you this evening on the two enterprise funds, the water and wastewater. Are there any further comments or questions before I pass this off to Kevin?
Council, any questions? I have one question, Cape. Are we taking our full allocation from all of our sources of water now, and then what we don't use, we are putting underground for the future?
We are taking all of our Central Arizona project water. We are not taking all of our SRP water. And we aren't taking it because the rules on SRP water are different. You can only use it in SRP member lands, which some of you might recall me saying is kind of from Skunk Creek to the south. And we aren't allowed to store it underground and earn long-term storage credits with it. And because of that, we just don't have a use for it. So we've talked about ways to improve that situation, but it's a bit of a trick that all cities play with. It is one reason why some cities encourage, say, commercial development or any large water uses to be on project and SRP on project land.
But it is very fortunate that we have both of those sources.
Yeah, and especially since SRP isn't a constant source, behind the scenes they look solid as you can get, and they really are. They're great partners. But the amount of water they let you have varies every year. You can have situations where they allow you less or more. And when they allow you less, it's nice that we're not using our full allocation because it doesn't really affect us at that time.
And the Native American lease water, are we taking that?
We are. So we have 7,000 acre feet of Gila River Indian Community water. I think of it and lump it together with CAP water. We have 25,000 acres of CAP water. So together we get a little over 32,000 acre feet, and we order all of that every year.
Thank you.
Great. So Public Works has 3 enterprise funds. We have 2 of them are in the solid waste and then the stormwater. Solid waste actually splits those funds between residential and commercial. times people think we split them between trash and recycle, but they're actually cost centers within each of these funds. Residential, as you can see, is about $12.3 million, pretty sizable fund. We do have cost centers along trash and recycling, and then a third one around environmental services. This is our outreach on recycling and education. And then while the Solid Waste Administration is on the residential side, there is a transfer from commercial that pays its proportionate share for Solid Waste Administration on the commercial side. Now, commercial is about 20% of the residential in terms of the size of the fund, and it is divided into two kind of streams of operation. One is front load. These are the pointy spikes that come out of the front of the garbage truck and flip the bin into the back of the truck. That's front load. Whereas roll-offs are the big, long construction dumpsters that you see that take a tractor trailer to load them up and roll them off, and therefore the roll-off business associated with the commercial trash service. In terms, let's focus on our residential first. If you take a look at this, our monthly rate is $15.29 per month. You can see that is the second lowest rate in the valley. And what do you get for $15.29? Well, you get a 90-gallon trash bin that we empty once a week. You get a 90-gallon recycle bin that we empty once a week. We do bulk pickup, bulk trash twice a year. If you want more than that, you can call for a special haul. That's an additional fee, starts at $50 and goes up from there depending on how much you're asking us to remove. Curbside holiday tree service is an annual service we provide. And then household hazardous waste, we offer 3 times a year by appointment. We'll come to your house and pick up household hazardous waste. So you get all that for $15.29 a month. And as you can see, we're pretty darn competitive here. But what drives that cost? Well, labor. We have a driver in every vehicle, so when wages change, that affects the pressure on rates. Landfill costs, as you might imagine, we take quite a bit of stuff to the landfill, and so those rates and their impacts or changes can definitely affect our rate prices. Fuel is maybe not as much a big factor, but it is something that's very volatile, and it's an interesting part each and every year because you're predicting fuel prices about 18 months in advance when you put together your budget, and you kind of hope that they stay pretty steady and you predicted them correctly, because when they're not, it really hurts to try to make it all work because you don't just adjust your rates to respond to the fuel prices. We drive pretty expensive vehicles. They're about $350,000 a piece, so that's a driver, as is the parts that go with it. Last year, our primary supplier of trash trucks went bankrupt, and so we bought a whole bunch of parts real quick since we wanted to make sure we could service those for the foreseeable future. Containers is an interesting cost pressure. It costs about $50 per barrel. We do about 1,400 new accounts each year, so that's 1,400 trash cans, 1,400 recycle cans that need to be purchased and put out. The interesting part here is that those used to be purchased with impact fees because they're one-time costs associated with growth. Since those are no longer permitted by the state, we've got to build that into the rate so that everyone is absorbing those one-time costs for our new residents when they come in. Regulation's a big factor, as is recycle processing, and that's really my gateway to the rest of the presentation, which is a lot on recycling. So you'll remember about a year and a half ago, I spoke about the recycle disruption. I'm big on those disruptions, but we talked about recycling in the China sword, which was the policy that came into effect that really limited what products China would buy out of the recycle bin, as well as when they came, they needed to be 99.5% pure. That change created a huge change in the commodity market, and we saw a 66% decline in the values of those recycled products. Huge drop in cardboard and mixed paper. Plastics, particularly plastics 1 and 2 that are your Gatorade bottle, your water bottle, your Tide bottle, those have held up pretty good, and most of that recycling is done domestically. The plastics 3 through 7, not a very good market, and those are ones that really struggling to find alternatives for that product. So some examples of those might be, yogurt containers are often 5, but think of the packaging, the plastic packaging that maybe goes over a toy, or sometimes you find in some food products, but mainly packaging elements. Those are 3 through 7 typically. Aluminum is still a great commodity. It gets a good price, it's lightweight, it's got a small carbon footprint each time it's reused, so it's still back to those days where you used to smash them up, take them to the grocery store and pay for your school project, they're still a great product. Glass, on the other hand, not as good. Glass is mainly sand, which is very heavy and very abundant, so it's not a great market for glass, but there's still products out there, but it's very minimal opportunities. So for us, we're looking at a pretty significant cost increase when it comes to recycling. In 2018, we were making money. In 2019, we were about neutral, and in 2020, we've started paying for it. So come 2021, our full cost of recycling is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $400,000 to $600,000 a year. So we need to start building that into our rates going forward, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. But recycling reactions. So when they saw that big downturn, a lot of different communities reacted differently. And I'm not going to go through the whole list here, but to get to some of the big ones, we know that communities such as our neighbor in Surprise and 6 other communities across Arizona suspended or discontinued their recycling activities, while others like Tucson changed the frequency to more biweekly pickups. Other communities have done different things, whether it's changing what materials they take, banning particular products, looking for other markets for it. Everybody's had to react in some form or fashion to respond to this. Now, Peoria, thanks to some fantastic policymaking by this group, got us into a really fantastic position when you look across the market. And again, a longer list than I can cover, but let me hit 2 in particular. Invested in better sorting equipment and offset processing costs. This was the $1 million investment that we made in the Phoenix recycling facility, material recovery facility. And not only did that get us better sorting equipment, so now we get the products through quicker, with less residue, and in a more pure fashion, so we have a better product to sell and recover more money on the other end. But Phoenix gave us a dollar-for-dollar credit for that investment. So not only did we put $1 million and get the better equipment, we literally got $1 million offset for our processing costs that will take us through July 1st of 2021, most likely. So we are not paying for any of the processing costs that I talked about a little bit earlier until the middle of 2021. So that is the great position that we're in. Moreover, that IGA was an incentive-based IGA, and so the less contamination that we have in our bins that we deliver, the cheaper our processing costs. And so that's why we have a heavy incentive on making sure our contamination is as low as possible. So lots of good things there that have put us in a good spot. Yes, ma'am.
Question.
I have a question. Can you go back one slide?
Yes, sir.
So have you noticed with the increased inspections, are you noticing any resident complaints as, or they stop using the recycler because they're like, it's just not worth my time to sort it. If I have to do this, I'm just going to stick it in the bag, or, in the regular bin and let the city worry about it.
Mayor, Councilmember, that's a great question. Interestingly enough, most of the inspections are very well received because people are like, I just want to know what's the right thing to do. And so most of our reactions have been very positive of thank you, make the changes. We have done some neighborhoods where we keep coming back week after week until we're getting it right. And we've had a couple that we've had to tag and say, you're just not doing it. But come that last week, they're like, all right, I'm on board. They may put more stuff in the trash can, but they're not putting the bad stuff in the recycle can, so that's good.
Thank you.
Turning over to the commercial side from a financial standpoint, we actually do have a separate trash and recycling rate in commercial because you can buy trash separate from recycling. And so the recycling rate, however, I would tell you is significantly under market. We just haven't made adjustments quick enough to keep up with the market on that side, and that's something we're going to have to take into consideration. Ma'am?
I have a question on, so because recycling is costing money and we're offsetting it, which is fantastic planning. But one of the things is glass is really heavy.
Right.
And, per ton when you're paying, that gets expensive. So is there any negotiation with our processing to take glass out of the stream? And the reason why I say that is the other large company that does this uses it for ADC or alternative daily cover.
Right.
Which is fine because it's inert, it's made out of sand, and, it's less material. Can we do that to lower our costs?
I think we've looked at trying to keep recycling as simple as possible and not vary what products go in, what products go out to complicate it too much, so we've stayed with that. To your other point of how to use it on the end side, yes, I think that the pulverized glass does provide different opportunities, whether it's the daily cover. We've actually been talking, Cape and I, about using it for bedding material in pipe, when laying pipe in our community. So there are other opportunities for it, and so we're continuing to explore how could we use that and make a market for ourselves, since there's not really people buying it.
So do you think we could take it out before it goes to the processor, making our cost less?
We don't have the city of Peoria itself doesn't have necessarily the ability today to sort the materials on a regular basis. I think we would have to build that into our contract, most likely with the MRF, to sort that out and then look to recover the product more directly, maybe buying it back, so to speak, and for another use, or rather than them paying someone to take it, we'll take it off their hands and use it in another use, I think is the more likely scenario.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The other thing, though, just with trash, or with commercial on the trash side that's important is density and distance. We don't take those into our rate factors. If you look at that little trash dumpster on the side there, our rate doesn't take into consideration what goes into it. So whether that's a bunch of light material like brush, or it is a bunch of horse manure, it's the same cost to the resident or to the commercial business who's paying it. It's not the same cost to us when we go across the scales at the landfill. And so this is something that we're very concerned about, not recovering the full cost because of density. Distance can be another factor. Again, it's the same rate regardless of where we pick up in Peoria, but I will tell you that there are some places that are not particularly cost effective to drive all the way out and pick up, and our competitors on the private side will definitely price that into it such that we get the less desirable accounts because of that. So these are things, as we look ahead to the rate study, that we want to make sure we're taking into consideration density and distance on commercial rates, full cost of recycling in residential side, and then making sure the growth costs are separated from the service costs, so at least we know what we're paying. So with that, let me just switch over to stormwater real quick. Just got one slide on stormwater. It's a small enterprise fund, 1.2 million. We mainly address our federally required regulations with the NIPD's permits and testing, but we also obviously clean out the storm sewers to make sure there's a place for water to flow when it rains. Landscape maintenance is a big part of our budget because we have a lot of basins that are pretty wide, take up a lot of area, and we got to make sure that they're looking in decent shape for those times where it's not raining. A surcharge is $1.25 going to $1.50 this next year. That's really going to help us with the dry well maintenance. That's something that we have not been able to keep up with because of the revenues available. With this change, we will finally get to a regular dry well maintenance program. So with that, any questions from council?
No, looks like that was all self-explanatory.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, we wanted to add a rate section into this presentation because rates are a very important part of managing enterprise operations and our utility operations. I have 4 slides which I'm going to cover in 2 minutes. So whenever we talk about rates, I like to bring up this slide because rates is not just about cost recovery and charging a random fee to make sure we cover costs. There's other objectives that we look at, and those are the other objectives: stability, equity, conservation, and affordability. So these are our current rate structures. For water, we have a base charge based on meter size, and we also have a volumetric charge based on usage and some taxes and fees. Most of our residents are in the 2nd and 3rd block of usage. And for our wastewater, we also have a base charge based on meter size and a volumetric charge based on winter water usage between December and March, because that reflects most of the indoor usage that's flushed down the sewer system. Now, the important thing to note here is that most of our revenues come from the volumetric charge. It's like 65% of revenues is based on volume and usage. So our revenues can fluctuate quite a bit in water and wastewater. That's why having adequate reserves in those funds is really important to balance out the revenue, fluctuations and ensure rate stability. Our residential solid waste rates, Kevin already covered, is based on a service charge for one recycling can, and our commercial is based on service charge for container size and number of pickups. And again, like Kevin said, there is no differentiation depending on how much you put in the cans or how heavy the waste is. And finally, I wanted to bring this chart up again because in July 1, we have a slight rate adjustment that council approved in 2019. And with those rate adjustments, we still are the lowest in the valley. And that is one of our rate objectives, to remain competitive for economic development and affordable for our residents. And finally, this slide is just to let you know that we have an upcoming rate study. We've hired a consultant to help us with a rate study. As I mentioned earlier, periodic rate studies is important to make sure we update our costs and revenue projections, look at our reserve levels, our debt levels, make sure our rate policies and our rate structure is still appropriate for our community. And with that, any other questions? And I can turn it back to Eric to summarize. Vice Mayor?
Just one quick question. Can you go back one slide to the comparison rates? I know I've seen this slide every year, and I don't know if I've ever asked this question, but do we know which of the other cities consider the rates to be enterprise funds?
I believe all the cities consider them as enterprise funds.
Really?
Yeah.
So a great question is, while they are structured as an enterprise funds, some of those do provide for the general fund to those specific cities. Is that what you're referring to, Council?
Yeah, I think ours is pretty clean in how we operate it, right?
Yes.
And I guess I should have rephrased it. How would we compare to other cities that treat this the same way we do? Right, because I see the fluctuation. I just can't believe that labor rates and fuel rates and equipment is that much more expensive in Goodyear and Buckeye. There's got to be something else kind of going on there, I guess is where I'm going with it.
And if I may, and then I'll allow for the experts to kind of go through that. The great examples that you had is they are very similar to the communities of Goodyear and Buckeye. Part of that you'll see is really related to the cost of providing water to those communities. And a lot of the discussion we've had about early on acquiring cap water rights and getting that first tier or highest tier has really assisted us now as we're seeing some other communities that are struggling to find those guaranteed and assured water supply. So a lot of that really comes into the water rates that you see in those specific communities. There are other communities that we do know that do use the utility funds to help offset some of the general fund costs. That is something that they put in, specifically in the city of Mesa has, per their charter, to do that in lieu of a property tax. So there are some areas that you are correct that they are not necessarily apples.
Okay. Thank you.
It's the same thing too, Mayor and Vice Mayor Finn, with solid waste. Kevin talked a little bit about distance being a factor in pricing, and some of those communities aren't near landfills.
Sure.
Don't have a neighbor that operates one, or have to pay a higher tipping fee to the private sector. So it all kind of factors into
that makes sense.
what you see there.
Okay, thank you.
So I think just to summarize, basically, as Jeff mentioned and we've indicated, we do our best to run these as most business-like as possible. We believe in planning, we believe in long-term financial stability of these, and really what this is about is assuring our community that the services are reliable and benefit the community. The other quick peak, or that we've talked about, and you just mentioned it, lowest in the valley, or one of the lowest rates in the valley overall, and we do want to maintain that. Sonia's absolutely right. We want to stay competitive as a community, not only to new residents, but existing residents, and of course our business sector as we grow that. And the most important thing, and we'll be back before you a little later this year, and that's about the right time. I think it's September or October. The results of that rate study will be shared with you, and you'll probably see some of the same faces here again. Because we do need to probably talk about what's going on, any updates in the recycling world, that density issue that Kevin talked about, and anything else that is impacting our water or wastewater services. So that, in a nutshell, summarizes everything. I think we're in good step with the professional expertise that we have on board here. Very dedicated professionals. They do a great job, and we've got three wonderful departments that are helping oversee the endeavor here. So with that, any questions, comments you want to share with us, we're happy to listen and follow up.
Council? I have a question with regards to the budget. If your rate study is not going to be done until after we do our budget, will any budget adjustments happen then the following year?
Yeah, it'd be a FY '21 budget conversation. We do every 2 years we're doing this, so absolutely. You approved 2-year rate increases. Those will come into play for fiscal year '21, then we'll have it teed up in time for the FY '22 year.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, all of you.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
That's it.
With that, thank you very much. As you can see, we're very proud of providing a very safe, assured supply and services to all of our residents. We're very proud also to, as you can see, really try and promote innovation and creativity in going through, and you can see a lot of that in some of the discussion we had. That said, if you have any other questions, we are here for you, and we'll see you again at budget time on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are adjourned until our 7 o'clock meeting.
President David Sandoval.
Thank you. Good morning. If I could, please, can I get one more round of applause for these wonderful students, teachers, and staff, and admin that are here? Thank you for that. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today, as we honor the past and celebrate the future. The Peoria Unified School District is steadfast in its commitment to ensuring a thriving community and a society of great character. This is realized through nurturing the creativity of our youth, promoting innovation and fostering learning and work environments that are inspiring, safe, and supportive. The development of the PUSD Smart Center is a testament to this very intentional mindset and the district's commitment to student success through the arts. I would like to thank those who came before us that brought this original building to life, especially fellow board member Mrs. Julia Spock, who served our district from the inception of this building to its completion. She shared with me the involvement of Peoria Unified students, the design and marketing of the center, and the many meetings with Paul Winslow, the original architect, and artist Robert McCall. Many of such fond memories of this space and the number of students who were impacted by this building is a list that is infinitely long. I am beyond thrilled that through inclusive, diligent, and solutions-oriented conversations, our board was able to preserve this space and the artwork you see surrounding us this morning. I'm also proud that learning and innovation will continue here. I want to thank you for joining us in continuing the mission of preparing every student for academic excellence and a successful future as a responsible citizen who actively contributes to society, the community, and the workforce. I'm looking forward to what's next as we embark upon this new vision.
The Mayor and City Council welcome you to the Peoria City Council meeting. As a courtesy to others, please silence all phones. If you would like to address an issue that is on the agenda, or if you would like to speak to the council regarding a non-agenda item, please complete a speaker request form, which can be found in the front lobby of the Peoria City Council chambers or in the tray to the left of the speaker's podium. Please place the completed speaker request form in the second tray to the left of the speaker's podium labeled Request to Speak. All speakers will have 3 minutes to complete their comments. A countdown clock is easily visible on the left side of the wall behind the City Council dais. Only items listed on the agenda may be addressed by the council. Since items presented as part of a speaker's request have not been listed on the agenda, and due to the requirements of open meeting laws, the council will be unable to respond to items presented as part of the speaker's request. However, please be aware that your comments will be noted. The speaker's name will be called to speak at the appropriate time in the order that the forms were received. Thank you for your interest and participation in the Peoria City Council meeting.
Meeting will now come to order. Please rise for a moment of quiet reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Hunt.
I pledge allegiance to
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will please call the roll.
Mayor Carlick.
Here.
Vice Mayor Finn.
Here.
Councilmember Patena.
Here.
Councilmember Bensbacher.
Here.
Councilmember Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Hunt.
Here.
Councilmember Dunn.
Here.
Council Liaison Greathouse.
Here.
Council Liaison Ravindran.
Here.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Peoria City Council meeting of March 3rd, 2020. The first item on our agenda is a presentation, certificate of appointments to newly appointed board and commission members. And I'd like to call your attention to the screen for a short video about Peoria's boards and commissions. I have 21 different boards and commissions, ranging from arts and culture to economic development to planning and zoning. They're made up of residents and business leaders who bring a wealth of personal and professional experience and who generously volunteer their time, energy, and wisdom to our community. These members meet on a regular basis, deliberating and collaborating on various projects and issues of importance for the benefit of all Peoria residents. In the past few years, they have had a direct role in influencing meaningful projects like the Veterans Memorial expansion, multiple public art installations, accessible park amenities, and our Youth Advisory Board even collaborated with the State Attorney General's office to team up in the fight against tobacco sales to minors. As we welcome new volunteers into this exceptional group of people, I want you to know how much we appreciate your willingness to share your time and expertise with our city. On behalf of the City of Peoria and the Peoria City Council, I want to express our gratitude and appreciation. Your service makes a difference. It's an honor to have you working alongside us as we shape our finest future. I'm there and I'm here too. Amazing, huh? I would like to introduce the new chair for 2020, the chair of the Boards and Commissions Subcommittee, Michael Finn.
Thank you, and I would like to personally welcome all of the new members of the boards and commissions. And when I call your name, if you would come down, we have a plaque for you, and you will get an absolutely priceless collector's item photo with the mayor. Starting with Adam Bowe. It's priceless. Keep this forever, Adam. Next, we have John De La O. Thank you. Next, we have David Bernilovich. onto that there. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. And finally, we have Greg Loper. Greg here? Greg is going to miss out on a picture with the mayor. We'll do a special one for him.
Greg served our community for, I don't know, probably 16 years on our Planning and Zoning Commission, so he decided not to come, I think, on purpose, but we're really glad to have him back. Thanks, everyone. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a second presentation celebrating the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association 50th anniversary. And I will turn it over to our city manager, Jeff Tyne, to begin.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. And it goes without saying that water plays such a critical role in the sustainability and the vitality for our community going forward. We are lucky enough to just have a conversation just a little while ago to learn much more about our water service utility that we provide. Today with us, we have the good fortune of having the AMWA Executive Director, Warren Tenney. And just for those that aren't aware, the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, or AMWA, is a real critical organization for all of its member agencies to help advocate for important policies that help all Arizona communities. So with that, I'd like to pass this over to Kate Powers, our Water Services Director, to make a more formal introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. There's no doubt that you are all aware of the concerns facing the state of Arizona when it comes to water resources and water-related issues. For many years, the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, or AMWA, as we call them, has helped cities such as Peoria ensure that we have the water we need to grow and prosper. Peoria has been a dues-paying member of AMWA since 1986, so a very long time, and we continue to view the organization as a critical component to our water management strategy. You might also note that our very own Mayor Carlat is currently the interim president of the Board of Directors, a position that will soon become permanent. We are certainly proud of the regional leadership role you have earned. With us tonight, as Jeff said, is Warren Tenney, the AMWA Executive Director, here to highlight the 50th anniversary of AMWA, explain how AMWA serves its members, including Peoria, and why the importance of AMWA will continue to grow into the future.
Thank you. Appreciate this opportunity to be with you tonight to talk about working together on water and the never-ending effort to keep our glasses full. So, my son Nathaniel is 21, and he has been in Sierra Leone, West Africa for the last 21 months. Despite his father's worries, I'm glad to report that he is loving it there and having quite the adventure. Nathaniel shared that in Sierra Leone, there is no running water as we know it. People get water either from a well, a truck, or a dam. This last summer where he lived, they had water tanks that are occasionally filled up by a pipe from a dam. Now, when I say dam, I do not mean like Roosevelt or Hoover Dam, but what you see in the picture. 3 times they had almost run out of water because there was no water coming from the dam. Now, during the holidays, Nathaniel was living in Kenema, Sierra Leone, and his experience with water got even worse. For 6 weeks, he had no water. He and his companions had to take jugs around town to find water. While obviously this is a regular situation for millions around the world, it was quite the reality check for an American kid to have to watch closely how to use water, figuring out a different way to shower, washing clothes by hand, and the time it just took to find water. When he finally had running water again, his response was, "It is a miracle." A miracle, the little things that we do take for granted, and yet being able to turn on our tap and have water is a miracle. Think about how the miracle of putting water to use here in the desert has created what Arizona is today. We have a long history of recognizing that we live in an arid state, and therefore we had better wring out every drop of water that we can. We do this because water fuels our way of life and our economy. Back in 1969, the city leaders from Phoenix, Mesa, Scottsdale, Tempe, and Glendale decided to establish the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, or AMWA. And they did this because they know that water does not flow according to a political jurisdictions, and it would be better if we worked together on water. Today, AMWA consists of 10 municipalities that span this valley from the Superstition Mountains to the White Tanks. Together, the AMWA municipalities provide water to 3.5 million people, more than half of the state's population. We also provide water to the businesses and industries that are key to the state's economy. We are all linked together because of water. It is, if one city in the valley is experiencing a problem with water, we are perceived to all be in the same situation. Therefore, AMWA provides the forum for us to work together. During our first 50 years, AMWA has played an important role in finding solutions for many of our state's water challenges. A few of our accomplishments include playing a significant role in the passage of the 1980 Groundwater Management Act, as seen in the top photo. The Groundwater Management Act has provided Arizona with a secure foundation for managing its water. We worked to secure an agreement with APS and some of our member cities to be able to provide reclaimed water to help cool the Palo Verde nuclear power plant. And AMWA helped develop the concept for underground water storage legislation that allows cities to store water in aquifers and use it when needed, as seen in the top right photo. The cities have worked hard to also elevate the value of reclaimed water as an important water source. And more recently, AMWA worked with its members on how best to implement and pass the Lower Basin Drought Contingency Plan in Arizona. DCP is a key example of how coordinating and working together on these issues gives our municipalities strength in numbers. One of AMWA's ongoing and most important and most significant contributions has been to help develop a water conservation ethic here in the Phoenix metro area. For nearly 40 years, Arizona has mandated conservation requirements for municipalities. In response, AMWA brought together water conservation professionals from member cities and established a regional water conservation program. Each of our members recognize the importance of working together on conservation as a way to help each city increase drought and shortage resilience by bending the demand curve, avoiding or pushing back large capital costs, and coordinating on policy and technical efforts. Today, AMWA and its members are recognized across the country as leaders in water conservation. The water conservation ethic that we have is one of the key reasons why we have been able to avoid imposing water restrictions during this time of prolonged drought. We will continue to do what we can to make our conservation efforts make the public aware of our conservation efforts so that they know what they can do as they hear more and more about drought, shortage, and climate change. Today, as we face shortages on the Colorado River and deal with other supply issues, cooperation among municipalities is all the more critical. At all levels within our member cities, we are facilitating discussions to find solutions. The AMWA Board of Directors is comprised of the mayor or a council member from each of our member cities. We are fortunate to have Mayor Carlett serving on the board and currently as board president. We are also engaged with our water utility directors, water resources advisors, conservation specialists, intergovs, finance and communication staffs. In fact, Kate Powers is on our management board, and Brett Fleck, Ryan Benner, and Victoria Castor actively engage in our water resources and conservation advisory groups. As we collaborate and agree on issues, AMWA then advocates for our members as we work with the Arizona Department of Water Resources, CAP, and SRP. Our most important advocacy effort is to speak with one active voice at the legislature. A guiding principle for us is to ask, does the legislation strengthen the foundation that the Groundwater Management Act and the 100-year Assured Water Supply rules provide us? Is it smart water policy that will keep the glass full? AMWA will continue to shine a bright light on what Peoria and our 9 other member municipalities do day in and day out to provide water. The AMWA cities collectively employ more than 2,500 professionals to ensure water is delivered every day of every year to homes, businesses, and industries. Because we provide water to small businesses and large industries, they are able to be the engine that drives Arizona's $320 billion GDP. What binds the AMWA cities together is our collective awareness that we must constantly be planning and investing in our water resources and infrastructure. Because of this, we can share the message that a shortage on the Colorado River does not mean a shortage at our taps. It is a miracle what the AMWA cities have achieved, and it all rests on a foundation of smart water policy, management, and cooperation. We are proud of what we have contributed in our first 50 years. Miracles require wise stewardship. Moving forward, AMWA is committed to continue to collaborate with Peoria and our other members as we do all that we can to continue to sustain the miracle of water here in Arizona. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions or comments? I have to speak to Warren here for a second. First of all, thank you for all that you do as director of AMWA and going around to all of the cities and trying to explain on this 50th anniversary year the value that AMWA brings to Arizona. It's pretty incredible, really, especially when you look at just one aspect of AMWA's stewardship, and that is what happens at our state legislature. You know, every year there is lots and lots of bills that are introduced, and some of them are good water policy, and many of them are not good water policy. And someone needs to be looking out for the greater good, and AMWA is a great steward in that sense. You know, people don't always know what doesn't happen, but those things sometimes are just as important as the things that do happen. And so stopping bad water policy is one of the very great aspects of what AMWA does. And in addition to that, having all of those cities, half of the population of our state, speak with one voice, well, I'm not sure anybody else can get that to happen. So getting it to happen about water is so critical and so valuable and so meaningful, and it all happens, you know, in the AMWA office. So I just have to congratulate you on the job that you're doing, and thank you for looking out for the greater good of everybody who needs the miracle of water in the state of Arizona. And thanks for coming here tonight.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Councilmember Hunt?
Well, thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. And we all certainly appreciate water probably more than we even realize. We do take it for granted for sure. I noticed on the list of cities there are quite a few cities not there. Is it still possible for cities to apply for membership, or what would be the reason that there are so many, even West Side cities, that are not members of AMWA?
The, Madam Mayor and
please.
Councilmember Hunt, the membership is based on some requirements, and that is to have both be utilizing water, have lands from the SRP, also an allocation of Central Arizona Project water, being larger than 50,000 in population, as well as having a water treatment facility and a wastewater facility. And there's some other requirements. So we do reach out and work with other cities when possible. And we have had dialogue with cities to the west of you. And we try to make sure that we still are coordinating. But that's kind of the requirements right now. And so right now, working with the 10 cities is a good enough challenge, but we're always welcome anything in the future.
Anyone else? All right, thanks very much, Lauren.
Thank you.
Appreciate your being here. Okay, we will now move on to the consent agenda. All items listed on consent agenda are considered to be routine or have been previously reviewed by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion unless a council member requests an item to be removed and considered in the normal sequence of the agenda. Tonight's consent agenda also includes items that require public hearing. So if there is any member of the public present who would like to address a public hearing that's on the consent agenda, please fill out a speaker request form, and we will hear that in the course of the regular agenda. And I have received no speaker request forms at this time. So council, are there any items to be removed from consent?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Patena?
10C.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, do I have a motion on the consent agenda with the exception of item 10C?
All motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Council, please vote. And the consent agenda passes unanimously. We will now move on to item 10C. Presentation from staff, Mr. Tyne.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. This would be a discussion and potential action to approve expenditures for a contract for our pavement management program. And to speak to this, we have Kevin Burke, our Public Works Director, to provide you an overview and address any questions you may have.
Thank you.
So, Mayor, I'd like to ask Kevin if he would, I was reading your CC in detail. I noticed that there's a lot of streets in my district, Beardsley, Westbrook Parkway, Union Hills, that are going to be addressed by this program. And for the people that don't have this in front of them, I'd like to know what's happening, why are we doing this, and how did you determine what areas would be addressed?
Very good. Mayor, Councilmember Patena, thank you for the question and the opportunity to talk a little bit about our program. So this is part of our pavement management program that we do each and every year. This is actually the third contract that we've done this year. We break these into smaller sections. This one tonight is just the micro seal. We've been before you with some of our other seal coating activities as well as the mill and overlay activities. So this is not the only streets that have been touched this year or that will be touched this year. We still have other activities out there. The way this is developed is that about every 3 years, and we're currently in this process, we do a technical condition survey. In other words, we put out a van, and we actually contract with a third party, that drives every single street, and they have a series of radars and sensors and optics that look at the streets and give it a condition rating called a pavement condition index. It's a scale of 1 to 100, and they rate every street accordingly on that scale. And then we take all that data, we sort through it, and we figure out where do you get the biggest bang for your buck. And so every year we take as much appropriations that can be allocated and go from highest priority down to get the biggest bang for the buck. And so for 2020, in this particular case, the micro sealing element of this year's pavement management process has some in every district, but you do have a big concentration in the central part. And if we can scroll up a little bit, you can see there's the Westbrook and Beardsley. But if you continue going north, you'll see that we've got a pretty sizable over in the northwest corner of the city as well. And so this is just the fact of where streets are in their pavement condition and what's the best bang for the buck. That's probably the most concise. I could do a 30-minute version of this, though, if you really want to get into detail.
Any other questions? No? Okay, it looks like good news for all of the people who have green lines.
There is, and if,
Is it that
actually,
simple?
yes, ma'am. If you'll flip the chart to the other one and scroll, this is kind of the red, the purple, the blue. These are all the other projects going on this year. So those who have green lines are excited, but those who had purple lines were excited too. So.
Okay, so in actuality, it looks like you're touching all of the districts in a pretty substantial way there
We really do.
in this time. And so do you normally have mill and overlays and all of the different aspects of maintenance touching all of the areas of the city? Or do you just start in one area and go north or go south? What's your logic?
Thank you for the question, Mayor. We generally, it does work out that we tend to touch all corners of the city just through the natural course of the condition ratings and then where we go. So it's, the condition ratings is looking at things that, you know, how do we keep a good street good? Because it's a lot cheaper to put some seal coat on a pretty decent street and keep it from cracking, the base from undermining, and then spending big dollars to redo the whole street. So we have some that are in decent condition that just a seal coat would treat it well. We have others that need a full rehabilitation, and so we're doing a mill and overlay. So those, really the data help drives that decision, and through the fact that we have so many different streets that were built at different times in different states, it just works out that we end up touching just about every corner of the city every year in some capacity.
So the policy is about changing our streets or repairing or refinishing our streets based on the most economical method instead of geographically.
Absolutely. It is all about what's the best bang for the buck across the street and maximizing our pavement condition index so that on average we have the best streets everywhere you look.
Good. Sounds like a good policy. Councilmember Dunn?
I just wanted to thank you guys for all your hard work on the streets. I know from day one, I kept saying, I want, you know, more things fixed, and the streets were a big part of it. And I'm seeing, you know, that happening now. And I'm really grateful that, you know, we are doing so much and that you are doing so much. We even had a meeting where, with an HOA, and they called in a couple potholes. You guys were out there literally the next day. So I just wanted to give kudos to you because you're doing a really good job. Thank you.
Thanks. We have a fantastic crew and they are on it.
Great. Thank you. Any further discussion? All right. Do I have a motion on item 10C?
Second.
A motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We will now move on to call to the public for non-agenda items, and I have received no speaker request forms, so we'll move on to reports from City Manager. Mr. Tyne?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. So first up, I wanted to mention that the 10-year census is rapidly approaching. This is such an important tool for us in that it really assists the city kind of really assess what are the needs, the size, the makeup of the city, but it also is a critical tool for helping ensure that we receive the appropriate federal and state revenues as well. So with that, we do have two individuals, Chris Hawkes, our Planning and Community Development Director, as well as Jen Stein, our Communications Director, to provide the City Council with an update on the 2020 census effort and upcoming activities.
Great, thank you, Jeff, and good evening, Mayor and City Council. We're pleased to give you an update on census activities. We're rapidly moving from what we call the awareness phase now to the call to action phase, which is just around the corner. So if you look at the screen, you can see that we're about 29 days from Census Day, or April 1st. That date really is it's a benchmark date that we use to answer the census question. But in reality, as I'll explain in a minute, we're all going to be receiving letters in the mail in about 2 weeks to invite us to self-participate in the census. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Regionally and locally, census campaign efforts, they're accelerating. They will continue to accelerate through the end of July as data collection ends. For those that be watching tonight, I wanted to spend a few minutes and review the upcoming census and why it's important. As you know, the U.S. Constitution requires the Census Bureau to count every person living in the United States and its territories, regardless of documentation status. And we do this every 10 years. The first census was conducted in 1790, and they've been conducted every decade since. So why is the census important? It is used in several different ways. It's used to apportion representatives among states in the U.S. House of Representatives. In fact, Arizona, with its growth, we're projected to gain another seat. Population counts are also used for redistricting at several levels, legislative levels, school districts, and as you know, city council. They're also used to make statistics that inform both businesses and organizations in how they want to make decisions. They're also used to distribute more than $675 billion annually from the federal government to the states through a variety of entitlement programs. And finally, they're used for allocating state-shared revenues, revenues that we get that go to providing services and improvements to our citizens. So it's important that we count everyone residing in our community. I mentioned that approximately $675 billion comes from the federal government every year. There was a study conducted a few years ago by the George Washington University. They analyzed spending by state for 55 federal programs, and these are federal programs that use population counts for the disbursement to each of the states. In fiscal year 2016, Arizona received $20.5 billion, and if you break that down per person, each person, it counts out to $3,000 per capita annually, or $30,000 per person per decade. That's how that number reaches. So it's very important that we count every person. These 55 programs are based on population counts. They come within a variety of areas, such as housing, education, transportation, financial assistance. Of course, we get federal funding for home funds, CDBG, also Head Start through the schools, and so forth. Probably the biggest point that we've tried to emphasize, that we'll continue to emphasize, is that the census responses are private, they're confidential, and they're protected under U.S. law. The results that they receive can only be used to create statistics. The Census Bureau cannot release any identifiable information or any personal information for 72 years. It can't be released to any agency or law enforcement. In fact, information gleaned from the census can't even be subpoenaed through the courts. They're essentially locked down. So, in fact, Census Bureau employees, they take a lifetime oath to protect personal information, and should there ever be any violations in U.S. code, they have some stiff penalties and potential prison time that could come with that. So they take it very seriously. So let's talk about a little bit about what's new with the U.S. Census. It now includes the ability to self-respond to the questionnaire online. That's probably the biggest change that we'll see this year. In fact, there are 4 ways now to self-respond. You can do it online, you can do it through the phone, by mail, or you can request an in-person interview, or wait for an in-person interview for that matter. The census is offered in 13 languages. 95% of us nationwide, we're going to receive an invitation to participate in the mail. For the other 5%, those are locations that maybe don't have, they're maybe remote or rural, and in those cases, the census will deliver the invitation door to door. Now, the first letter we're going to receive between March 12 through 20, so literally in a couple weeks, we're going to receive an invitation from the Census Bureau to self-respond. That first letter that you will get, it'll provide an overview of the census. It'll talk about the language assistant that's available through the Census Bureau. We'll also get a unique code assigned to us that's assigned to each address. So we'll get a census code, and we'll use that code to self-respond. I do want to mention, though, that if you don't happen to have the ID, you can still respond. You'll just need to put in your address. So the lack of a ID won't restrict you from responding. We want everyone to respond. Okay, if we look at the census timeline, again, the first letter will be received somewhere around March 12th, and there will be a series of communication that the Census Bureau will be sending out to all households throughout the next month and a half or so. April 1st is National Census Day. That's really a benchmark date. So, for example, if you happen to if you happen to share 2 homes equally, then the question will be, well, where are you on April 1st? So it's a benchmark day to answer some of those questions that you might have. Starting May 13th, 2020, the enumerators are going to start going door to door. And then May through the end of July, that's when they'll continue their self-response. All data collection ends at the end of July. That's really the time period to get everyone to self-respond. And then if you look further, the apportionment counts are due to the president by the end of this calendar year, and then the redistricting counts are expected to come back to us end of first quarter of 2021. So one of the cool features offered by the Census Bureau will be what they call a response rate map. That's going to be updated in real time. So what does that look like to us? Starting March 20th, they're going to be providing daily response rates updates. So this is going to be 7 days a week. They're going to update this every day of the week. We'll be able to look at a map and understand what the response rates are by census tract. This is going to continue through the end of May, and then after that, it's just going to be updated daily, but Monday through Friday through the end of July. So we'll be able to understand, where we might be struggling to get self-response in place, and that helps each community not only track response, but focus resources in areas that are perhaps seeing a slower response rate. So that's going to be a very helpful tool, I think, to the communities. As you know, Peoria is part of the regional effort coordinated by MAG, or Maricopa Association of Governments. They've contracted through a company called Reister. They're the consultant for MAG and the member agencies. They're conducting all the regional outreach, marketing, and advertising campaign. I'm sure you've seen advertisements through television, radio, billboards are out there as well. Lots of social media collateral has been placed as well. And you'll continue to see that ramped up. As I mentioned, locally, events and ad spots have occurred, but we're going to be ramping those up sharply as we moved into this next phase. We have gotten out information through the media and our own citywide publications. We did a taping with the Peoria Unified School District a few weeks ago. We're doing a Facebook Live spot tomorrow. We also have a variety of speaking engagements that are scheduled and occurring in the next phase. The Office of Communications with Jen's group has been aggressive in pushing information through social media. We also have, we're going to be having representation at several upcoming city events that'll be occurring. We're also working through the library, working through the resource center to have not only resources available, but have the ability to respond to the census questionnaire through city computers and through some iPads that we purchased that we'll have available at city events. And then finally, I should mention too, we also wrapped our refuse trucks as they drive around the city, advertising the upcoming upcoming census. And then finally, working through our Complete Count Committee and all our various stakeholders, we're also working through them to push out information. They are our community ambassadors and very helpful in this collective effort. Now, there's a variety of resources that are available. You can go to any one of these sites. You can go to 2020census.gov. It's not only got a lot of information that you can access in terms of what your unique situation might be, but it's got all kinds of information for you. We've linked not only the census and MAG from the city website, but there's a variety of information on our website as well. So with that, that's all I have, and unless you have anything you want to add, Jen?
Thanks, Chris. Just we're painting the town census, so just continue to watch out and help us spread the message, and we're definitely ramping up the communication efforts in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Thank you.
Thanks for all that you're doing. I have seen a lot of it, especially on social media. It's been very prevalent, so good job on that. Any questions, council? Are you aware that a census is coming? Has anyone heard? All right, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Chris and Jen, and thank you for all your work on leading that, and the Complete Count Committee has been an outstanding process, so thank you. Our last item that we had tonight is the upcoming special events video, where we'll showcase an upcoming Park Fest, the Arts and Cultural Festival, and Shakespeare in the Park. So we'll run that real quick for you. some great cultural and recreational programming for everyone. So that's all that we have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Because our videos are just getting better and better all the time, aren't they? Okay, we are going to start with reports from the City Council. We'll begin with Youth Council Liaison Ravindra.
So last Friday, I had the opportunity to attend the Boards and Commissions dinner. I had fun, even though I didn't really know any of the music played, but it was still fun. The Youth Advisory Board has set a date for Youth Government Day. It's going to be April 24th from 8:30 to 11:30 a.m. at City Hall. And we're currently targeting leaders in high school clubs and community service organizations. And I'm also excited to be going to DC this weekend. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Dunn?
Yes, we we had Northern Parkway a public meeting, and it was really well-attended. And I did want to, a lot of people were responsible for making this a great information, a place to get information. But I wanted to really let Adina know, thank you for all you did, because you know, the meetings that you took time and explaining things helped me to also explain it to the residents, and it was really well received. A lot of all the hard work that you put in, it shows. So thank you. I appreciate it. We also, Bill and I attended this weekend Deep Within, and it was this Saturday, and it was an open house, and they're trying to raise money, a capital campaign to purchase the facility. And I don't know, but they raised quite a bit of money that day. I don't know what the end figure was. $110,000. So they do a lot of good work in our community, and we're I'm really grateful to be a part of that. Last, I did want to let everybody know that the pavement, since we've been talking about it, pavement management update. They will begin the program to resurface those streets or slurry seal, however they do it, in Suncliff area. So just pay attention and be observant. You know, if there's flaggers, things like that, just word to the wise, just be careful when you see our people working out there. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hunt?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. This past week, all day Tuesday and all day Thursday, Councilmember Binsbacher and Councilman Patena and I spent the days interviewing not-for-profits with the hope of giving them money to help tide them over for another year. I think I speak for all of us, and I will let them speak for themselves, but to me, it's the most meaningful thing that I do for the entire year. It's just so heart-wrenching and heartwarming to hear of the things that they accomplish in our city, from grief support to burn units to you name it, and there is a not-for-profit out there caring and taking care of our people. And it's a great honor to be able to donate money to them. And then the other highlight of my week was Park Fest down at Sundance Park. And it was really, really well attended. It was just a gorgeous day, and everybody had a great time. I really want to say thanks, though, to our employees that spent that 3 or 4 hours out there. It's your day off, and I get that, but you were out there. Always a really popular favorite is the big trucks. And it's not just the little kids that like the big trucks, but the big kids like those too. And they were taking people up and down the ramp for the Dial-A-Ride, and the police were there giving kids bike helmets. And then when they got fitted for a bike helmet, they didn't just give it to them, they fitted them for the size that would be good for them. They got in a drawing, and I gave away four bicycles to the winners. Fire was there with the big truck. Garbage trucks were there showing how the arms go up and down. And it's just, and thanks to our department that supplies all of the community services, that puts all those Park Fests together. And I think everyone for each of us is different. We get to choose based on what our citizens would enjoy. And I'll tell you, we hit it out of the ballpark on this Saturday. It was really good. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. On the 21st, I had the great opportunity to go over and partake in the homeless outreach event that the police department did along with our Chris Hallett and his team. I just want to thank you guys so much for being able to reach out to those less fortunate. And not only did you reach out to them, but you reached out to their four-legged friends as well. So I want to thank you for showing the compassion to those individuals. Thank you so much. On the 22nd, I attended the Bravo Peoria event over at the library, and even though it was raining like crazy, that sure didn't stop the event. They couldn't do the food trucks out in the park, but it didn't stop all the events that are going on inside. So John Sefton and his team, thank you so much for putting on that event, and also to the Friends of the Library. On the 27th, I had a great opportunity to judge the Great Communicator Speech Contest over at Legacy Traditional. And it was 10 students that talked about the impact that social media has on the youth of today, and they had 5 minutes to speak about how it impacted, and listening to these individuals communicate their thoughts was just awe-inspiring. So I want to thank the students for partaking in it and thank the school for inviting me to that event. That afternoon, it topped it off with having lunch with students over at Kellis High School and our monthly lunch with the council members. So I want to thank those students that took their time to come and talk to me. Their topics were they wanted to know how they could get more engaged in Peoria and what they could do for student engagement. So I've reached out to Chris Hallett and his team to get them more engaged. It just never ceases to amaze me, the youth of Peoria, how they want to get engaged in everything. So kudos to all of them. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Finn.
I just have a couple of items. I want to thank the staff for the amazing event that was put on Friday evening for the Boards and Commissions Appreciation. That was really, really well done, and I appreciate all the hard work that went into that. 2 public service announcements. We have a shred-a-thon at Centennial High School coming up on April 11th. Donations are appreciated and go to a couple of scholarship funds that they put together there. And then lastly, Big Trash Pickup continues in the Palo Verde District. Please use common sense when you put your items out. Don't put them in front of the collective mailboxes, in front of other people's driveways. I know it sounds like common sense, but it's not so common anymore, so please keep an eye on that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Binsbacher.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to go back to, Thursday the 20th, the Robo-Ride ribbon cutting ceremony, and I just want to congratulate everyone involved. That was such a fantastic event, and the coverage from that was tremendous. And I'm just really proud to be the first city to put a vehicle of its kind like that on our streets. Very, very exciting. The grant hearings on the 25th and the 27th were time well spent, and I just want to reiterate that there is some fantastic work being done in our city, and the city is contributing to a lot of different organizations that are improving the quality of life. I want to especially thank Karen Imig, Jamie Gonzalez, and Renee Ayers for their work in putting together such an incredibly organized process that just was seamless for us. Attended the Boards and Commissions event on this last Friday, and it was a fantastic event, and I just want to thank all of our volunteers. We can't do it without you. Thank you for being an extension of all of us. And then also attended on Saturday the Arizona Broadway Theater Ball, which was their biggest fundraiser of the night, a tremendous focus on partnerships, which I was really happy to see, and the youth programs. And they're partnering with Herberger Theater and kind of exporting their art to other areas coming out of Peoria, which is, a big deal. So anyways, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Patena.
Thank you, Mayor. I too participated on February 20th, the Robo-Ride. I won't repeat what Councilmember Binsbacher said, but it's quite an interesting piece of technology, and it was a great event. Friday, February 21st, I went to the homeless outreach event. I believe we do that 3 times a year. It really is it's an amazing thing that goes on. There were at least 20 not-for-profits there serving the homeless population. They had veterinarians, showers, people got haircuts, clothes giveaway, food giveaway. It's really good events. I'd like to thank Councilmember Binsbacher and Hunt for participating in Tuesday, the 25th, and Thursday, the 27th, not-for-profit grant hearings. We've been doing it now for over 25 years, and we give almost $1 million away every time to the not-for-profits. And I think this time we probably listened to about 60 different not-for-profits. The good thing that that came out of this was a lot of these not-for-profits are now using our resource center, so that makes me really happy. Friday, February 28th, they had a Boards and Commission Appreciation event. I want to thank the city clerk. I thought their staff did a great job. It was a great event, a lot of fun. And also on Saturday, February 29th, along with Councilmember Dunn, I attended a Deep Within Recovery open house. It's a kickoff to their capital campaign. They're trying to buy the property so that they can cut their rent down and keep that facility open. Last thing I have is thank you, Mayor, for your involvement with AMWA and becoming the next president. Appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Youth Council Liaison, Great House.
So on April 13th, from 1 to 4 at the Rio Vistas Rec Center, we're going to be hosting a teen job fair. The Youth Advisory Board has been working on this for the past few months, and we have a variety of vendors coming to, I guess, provide work opportunities for the youth. And as Ritika mentioned, me and her and a few Youth Advisory Board members, we're going to be traveling to Washington, D.C., to the National Congressional City Conference as youth delegates, and we have meetup schedules and youth workshops, and we're really looking forward to the trip. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just like to reiterate thanks for our council members who are serving on the Not-for-Profits Subcommittee. Those are funds that come to us through the federal government. We pass them through to organizations that are local and that need those funds in order to operate and serve the people in our city and in our region. So those are called CDBG funds, Community Development Block Grant funds, and we are just the pass-through organization for those. So thanks for all your work on that. I know that it is a long, long day and a very long process. And with that, we are adjourned.